This year, a new house called Universal Monsters Legends Collide. Just real quick, tell you a little bit about the concept of this house. It starts with this. Believe it or not, now Universal made a ton of Universal Monsters movies. Do you remember all those ones like towards the, kind of when they got into the 40s and they just started throwing the kitchen sink at it? Like House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula. It was like, you know, okay, we'll have the Wolfman, Frankenstein, Dracula, you know, they just like pile them on. Believe it or not, they never did a movie in the original Universal classic monster horror cycle that had Dracula, the Mummy, and the Wolfman. Never happened. So, now it is. So what we did is we partnered with our sister park, Universal Orlando Resort. Our creative teams joined forces to create this overall concept, and we actually did it as kind of a two-parter. So in Orlando, that's like part one of the story. That's going to Egypt for the expedition. And then part two is in Hollywood, which is where it picks up when it comes back to London. So speaking of London, this particular house for Hollywood is set in the Limehouse district. Now you grew up in England, right? Do you know what I'm talking about, the Limehouse? Never been there. It's along the River Thames, but why it's important is when the British Empire was, you know, in its full glory, that was like the equivalent of like Amazon. Right? All shipping for the world came in and out of the Thames. Why does this relate to the Universal Monsters? It's because it's already in the story. If you know Dracula from 1931, what does he do? He gets on the Vesta and he travels to England, and then the majority of the film takes place in England. In The Mummy in 1932, the expedition where they're trying to find the mummy is funded by the British Museum. And lastly, in the Wolfman story, of course, that begins at Talbot Castle, which is in the UK, it's in Wales. So we brought all of these characters to London. Now, why are they there? Just for a goof. We just thought it would be funny. Let's just have them all show up at the same place at the same time. No, there always has to be a conflict. So for us, it's this idea of curses. So each of these characters are cursed in a different way. What's Dracula's curse? Well, he can never go out when the sun's up, right? He always has to exist at night. He can never go outside in the daylight. Think of how prolific Dracula would be if he could just go out in the daylight and start biting people. So Dracula is seeking an end to the curse that is on his life. And he's represented in the house by a blood red moon. Then you go to the Mummy. He's an eternal slave. He's cursed for all eternity to be a slave. So he has the harvest moon, the kind of gold moon you see in the middle. And then the Wolfman, his curse is obvious. Every time the moon is full, he turns into a beast and ends up having to kill people that he doesn't want to kill. So all of these characters are searching for an end to this curse. And what it's all tied up with, or what we decided it's all tied up with, is a character named Amun-Ra, sometimes just called Ra. He's like the god of gods in ancient Egypt. And just above his head, that hieroglyph, that's his symbol. So we wanted something to represent him in the house, and we thought of the idea of burial amulets. The Egyptians would bury mummies with amulets that were supposed to help them in the afterlife. So we decided that the mummy needed an amulet of his own, so we designed one. So this is the amulet of Amun-Ra. This is what our mummy character wears. This is what's keeping him alive. This is what's making his heart still pound. It's a special effect and a costume piece. So it's actually got LED technology so that the fire opal in the center of it pulses with his heartbeat throughout the house. And I want one. I've seen the prototype, it's awesome. And here's some new music. give it up for Slash. You know, it's funny because, like, we didn't know if that music would be ready, like, if it was going to make it, because our audio designer's, like, you know, working furiously on everything for Horror Nights right now, and I was flying, and I got to, like, an airport, and I was like, oh, there's music.
I got it at the same time. I was like, oh.
So that's like the first time I've actually sat down properly and listened to that track. What was it different this time around working on the new house as opposed to, like, did you have a different inspiration or different vibe you wanted to tap into?
It's always for some reason, it's always completely different from one to the next. But this one it's such a great idea, right? And again, I was like trying to evoke some sort of you know, for that period, a little bit of a classical kind of thing to it, and also keep it really heavy, you know. So he just put this together from all the stuff that I wrote, you know, and sent him. So I was really impressed how he edited it together.
And that's to give credit where credit is due. That is Stacy Quinolti.
Yeah, Stacy's not here, but he's dynamite to work with.
Stacy oversees all of the audio for Halloween Horror Nights. Now we're like really down to the wire, so I'm going to do this really, really fast, and then we're going to get to a ticket giveaway. All right, real quick. Here's 13 monster Easter eggs you can look for when you're going through Universal Monsters Legends Collide. Starts at the facade. I mentioned that it's a shipping warehouse in the Limehouse district of London. This is my original research image, and then I gave it to Chris, and he came up with this. If you're going down the Starway, and you look to your right, you'll see it. It's in the park right now. Did anybody pick up on this Easter egg? What is the name? Yeah, what is it?
Dracula.
Alucard. Dracula, spelled backwards. And that comes from the movie Son of Dracula. The next one, the London Docks, another research image I pulled for Chris. And then this is his ground plan looking down on it. So we have all of these crates and boxes, and I wanted all of them kind of do a little foreshadowing that this is going to involve the Egyptian god Amun-Ra. I wanted his hieroglyphs stamped on them. So you're going to see that if you look really carefully. You might have to look really, really carefully, because the last picture I saw, they weren't on it. So like Monday, I'm going to get a stencil and start painting. But you'll see the symbol of Amun-Ra on all of the crates. The dead dock workers from Dracula. I love that scene when they come on the ship and there's just everybody on board the ship is dead. We wanted to work that into the experience, so when you enter the shipping warehouse, you'll notice that everybody working inside is dead. Except for one guy. This guy. Renfield's behind the shipping and receiving counter desk, you know, going, doing his freaky laugh. And he has that line in Dracula that I love that is also applicable here, when he goes, "Master, we're here." So of course, if Dracula is coming to London, he's gonna, yeah. No, I'm doing it Monday. Yeah, I'll be doing Renfield.
Sounds good.
So, yeah, I've got a few credits. I've got some weird ones. I do Mother Bates too. If you're ever in front of the Psycho House, and
Is that you?
yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Probably shouldn't have told you that. But Renfield's going to make a cameo in our house as well. Of course, shipping warehouses always have these huge holding rooms. Of course, that gives us an opportunity to have a bigger scene. This is a really big scene in the house. Now, over the years, you guys have seen lots of this type of stuff in our houses before, right? You know what I'm talking about? Anubis, that medallion these are from real movies. This is from The Mummy Returns and Scorpion King. Believe it or not, the whole inspiration for this house and wanting to do it, I was in our warehouse about this time last year, and I walked into our off-site facility and I was like, damn, we've got a lot of Egyptian statues. Because back when they made The Mummy in '99 and The Mummy Returns, they just gave us that stuff. So we have all these huge, huge Egyptian statues. We've never used them for Horror Nights. So I wrote a whole house just so I could use them. So when you're going through the holding room and you're admiring the statues, just know those are all real film props. Then there's this. Also, when you're going through this scene, you'll see a chest, and it's glowing, and you'll hear this dun 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 dun. And it's a reoccurring element. You'll see it a couple of different places in the house. And I just like Pulp Fiction, really. I always liked the briefcase in Pulp Fiction, and I was like, oh, we should do that with like the mummy. Like, this is the case where they keep his heart, and it's still beating. And then we're gonna need a really big tent in the future to build this house because, like, when I say this is the Amazon of the world, look at how big these places were. We wanted to take you through the storage rack, so you're gonna be going through the storage rack scenes, you're gonna run into another character named the High Priest of Karnak. This is a stock Universal character. You see him in all the sequels to the Mummies, but we wanted to bring him to life, a new character for Halloween Horror Nights. So here is our High Priest of Karnak. He gets his very own medallion that he gets to wear. And then all the sequels to the Mummy, they always go to a graveyard, right? And there's a good reason for that. It's because they didn't want to go to Egypt to film these movies. Like, did you ever notice this about the Mummy movies? Like the first one, there's all this amazing Egyptian, sets, and then all the other ones, they're like in America.
Yeah.
They're just like,
It's just
the Mummy, he's here in America.
Too expensive.
It's because the sequels didn't have the same budget as the original, and as they went along, they had to come up with different storylines. But that meant we could take you to a graveyard, and there's some Easter eggs in the graveyard. Look at the names above the crypts, and you'll see some of them, including this one, which has got the name Browning, which of course is an homage to Todd Browning, the guy who directed the original Dracula. And then the graveyard also gave me this idea. Have you ever been to Highgate in London?
Have I ever been?
The cemetery, Highgate. Have you ever been there?
Highgate, no.
We got to go sometime because it's really cool. Because it was built in the Victorian times when there was a huge obsession with Egyptology. So they have an Egyptian wing of this entire cemetery. So that gave us an idea. Oh, we can go into the cemetery and then it can take on an Egyptian feel. And then there can be a secret passageway that takes you to the museum.
Where is it exactly? Where's
Highgate? It's just outside London.
I will check it out.
Turn left at Big Ben, and then you go past. I was just in London. I can't even remember.
I was too.
I know.
I just played it.
How come we didn't see each other? I was there.
Same day?
Pretty close. No, you guys were right before me. We kind of like did this. So the secret passageway takes you into the curator's office, and there, look, see, there's the glowing chest. And the curator, of course, is dead. And this is Dracula's scene where he comes busting